You mean to tell me none of you can fix this? Michael Grant's voice cracked through the tension like a whip. His icy glare swept across the room, pinning each of the 11 lawyers to their overpressed leather chairs. No one dared to answer. Outside, the wind howled against the 31st floor windows of the Grant and Foster building in downtown Boston. Inside, the air was suffocating, not from heat, but humiliation. Clause 38B was a ticking bomb. If they couldn't neutralize it before the Renshaw Group's lawsuit went to court, the firm wouldn't just lose $60 million. It would lose its reputation, something Michael Grant, the CEO who had built his empire on precision and dominance, valued more than money. At that exact moment, the door creaked open. In walked a woman pushing a mop bucket, wearing Fatigen sneakers that had seen better days and a Garfield t-shirt that read, "I'm only awake because coffee exists." Rachel Evans hadn't expected to be called in that morning. One of the associates had knocked over a glass of water during the chaos. Now she knelt quietly in the corner of the room, soaking up the spill with an old towel head down, invisible as always, or so she thought. Above her, voices clashed like swords. Legal citations flew, fingers pointed. One lawyer, sweating for his 2000 suit, muttered, "This clause is ironclad. There's no way around it." Rachel glanced up just for a second. There it was. Clause 38 scribbled in red marker across the whiteboard. The way it was written, backward, disjointed, sloppy. She didn't mean to speak. She didn't even raise her head. But somehow her voice cut through the noise. "That's not a locked clause." 11 conversation screeched to a halt. Michael's head snapped toward her. "What did you just say?" Rachel stood up slowly, towel still in hand. Clause 38B. It's not locked. It's a structural misfire. It contradicts Article 127 of Federal Contract Code. It's written backward from the logic, not the law. Silence fell like snow, heavy, muffled, unbelieving. One attorney scoffed. "With all due respect, this is a legal discussion, not a janitorial conference." Rachel smiled. "And yet I'm the only one in this room who noticed that clause folds in on itself if you trace it through Section 14. Michael Grant narrowed his eyes. "Howdo? You know that?" She shrugged. "I read a lot. A retired law professor in my neighborhood gave me his collection before he moved to Florida. I read a chapter every night after I put my son to bed." Another chuckle. A different lawyer rolled his eyes. "You read law textbooks for fun." Rachel turned to him. "Better than watching reruns of people who pretend to argue in court and get paid to lie on TV. That one actualism." Michael stepped forward. The room parted as he approached her. Something unreal in his expression. "Did you study law?" "I did. 3.5 years. I wasn't semester from graduating." But then she paused. "Life. And you just kept treading." "I never stopped." Rachel said softly. "B-books don't judge. They teach." Michael said nothing for a beat, then quietly, "Explain it to me again." "All of it." Rachel set down the towel. The janitor became a professor. Clause 38 bis structurally dependent on a conditional that violates the logical flow of Section 14. That combined with contradiction of Article 127 opens it up for interpretation less. The key precedent Garvin vs. Dakota Energy 2019. It's page 197 in Volume 2 of Professor Warren Blake's series. Dead silence. Michael blinked. "You've read Garvin vs. Dakota twice." Rachel said the defense argument was strong, but the closing statement was weak. I would have ended with a quote from Justice Bloom instead. More impact. The room was still stunned. Sumian cowed. Another checked his phone, pretending not to be embarrassed. Rochelle picked up her bucket. "I can wear a suit tomorrow if that helps," she said as she turned to leave. I accidentally bought one at a thrift store thinking it was a sweatshirt. Michael's voice cut through the air again. Miss Evans, is it? Shep asked. Yes, Rachel Evans. I want to speak with you in my office now. Shell looked at him. This man who had everything, but couldn't see what was right in front of him until just now, and said with a crooked smile, I'd be honored, but fair warning, the floor's still wet. As she walked out, every lawyer stared after her, unsure whether they had just witnessed a humiliation or revolution. They hadn't yet realized that it was both. Inside Michael's sleek office, where even the furniture seemed to understand the importance of silence, Rachel sat down across from him, still in her Garfield shirt. Michael handed her a tablet with a long convoluted clause on the screen. We use this in our recent merger. Thought she scanned it. This clause tries to sound smart. It's a trap, but not a good one. It violates Article 21 of the Civil Code. You memorize that article. I understand it. There's a difference. Michael studied her the way someone studies a storm. Unpredictable, quietly powerful, strangely beautiful. He handed her another clause. This one's about a set protection during unilateral turning. Rachel shook her head, thrown out at least 3 times. Most recently in Rowan versus Palms Trading 22-1. Violates good faith principle. Michael exhaled something between a sigh and a laugh. 3 of my senior attorneys approved that clause. Rachel didn't. Flinch. Then they should read more and copy less. Michael leaned back, genuinely stunned, not by what she knew, but by how she made him question everything he thought was certain. What's your son's name? He asked it suddenly. Aden. Does he know his mother is a genius? Rachel smiled. He thinks him a superhero, but only because I can't open peanut butter jars without help. Michael chuckled, then stood. No one can't know you're helping me. Rachel raised an eyebrow. So I'm your confidential ace cleaner now. I prefer strategically. She picked up her mop and bucket earned at the door and said, as long as he don't have to wear heels. This uniforms it all. Michael watched her gown, aware that this quiet woman had just shifted the axis of his world. And outside, in a city of contracts and cold ambition, something completely had begun. A mind that cleaned floors had just started cleaning up the legal mess of Boston's most powerful law firm. Would you trust me own without a degree if they saw what others couldn't? The next morning, Rachel Evans returned to the Grant and Foster building with the same fatigues, the same worn sneakers and thiesome nonsense walk that said she belonged everywhere and nowhere. Shouldn't need a pass. Security already knew her by name, but this time, when she walked through the glass doors, something was different. People stared a second longer. A junior paralegal galliffered her coffee. Someone from her smiled nervously and quickly looked away. Michael Grant had said no one could. No, but somehow the silence surrounding her was now loud. Upstairs in the sleek white meeting room with its endless windows overlooking Boston, the legal team was in full panic mode again. Another clause, another disaster. The firm was preparing its defense against the Renshaw Group, and one small misstep could unravel the entire merger. This time it was a question about a reversibility clause, something that sounded harmless but could cost them millions. Michael sat at the head of the table. Fingers steepled, his voice tight. Can someone explain why this clause hasn't been updated since the 2017 merger draft, and why it conflicts with our current partnership terms? Nobody spoke. That was when Rachel, without knocking, walked in carrying a tray of coffees and a yellow folder tucked beneath her arm. She walked straight to Michael, handed him the folder, then placed a coffee in front of each person at the table without asking what they liked. Michael opened the folder, a memo handwritten in small, tidy script. Section 38B cross-references a reversibility clause that was made obsolete by Article 92B of the up-to-date Guidelines for Corporate Partnerships. In its current form, it leaves. A backdoor for Renshaw to claim a symmetrical benefit, especially if they can argue breach under pre-merger premises. The room went still. Rachel leaned against the wall, sipping her own coffee as if this were just another Tuesday. One of the senior lawyers, Daniel Parker, finally broke silence. "Where did you get fate analysis?" Rachel didn't blink. "From Reading while scrubbing the 5th floor yesterday." That clause was printed out and left by the copier. Another lawyer frowned. "You were reading our draft documents." "They were in the trash." Michael raised a hand, silencing Ferrum. "Rachel, what would you do to fix it?" "I already did," she said, reaching Ginto. Her bag and handing over anotherpaper. "I drafted a cleaner version with suffixwords built in. You'll need to rev as subclause as DNF, but it'll hold up even under Renshaw's pressure tactics." Daniel Parker looked at Thepapermouth opening slightly. Ashley Brooks, the firm's deputy legal director, narrowed her eyes. "You didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement." Rachel met her gaze calmly. "No, but I also haven't said a word to anyone. Not a Boothus, not about anything. If you'd prefer I stay quiet." "I will, but just remember, silence doesn't win trials." Michael stood slowly. "Let's continue this in my office." Rachel followed her sneakers, squeaking softly against Thepelish tile. The second the door shut behind them, Michael turned to her. "You're not just helping, you're leading. I'm just pointing out what you already know, but forgot to look at from another angle." He sat down heavily. "I've had people with Ivy League degrees screw up cases like this. And yet you didn't." "Finish college," Rachel finished for him. "Yeah, I've heard that one." "No," Michael said, shaking his head. "I was going to say, yet you see the law like it's music, like you hear a note out of Tunathet no one else hears." Rachel blinked. "I grew up with a dad who worked in construction. He died when I was 16. Ficampani blamed him for the accident, said he wasn't wearing safety gear. My mom didn't know how to fight them. I decided I would." Michael leaned forward. "Did you win eventually?" "Took 2 years, but we got enough from my mom to open a seamstress shop. She's still sewing dresses back in River." He nodded slowly. "You should be the one in court on Monday." "I can't," Rachel said. "I don't have a license, but I can get you ready. I can arm you with everything you need." Michael's voice dropped. "You already have." That night, long after Thebelding emptied out, Rachel stayed behind at her desk. Her new desk 1 floor below the executive wing. Not just janitor's closet anymore. Michael had given her an office. Quietly, not black on the door, but hers. She opened a book. Federal Presidents Volume 4. Aiden had fallen asleep after dinner, and Carmen had offered to stay over. "Just study, honey," her mother had said. "You've earned that right." A knock at the door. It was Michael. He held 2 coffees. "Can't sleep?" he admitted. "Too much writing on this case." Rachel looked up from her notebook. "Nervous or insecure?" Michael smirked. "There's a difference, yes," she said. "Nervous means your heart's racing, but you are prepared. Insecure means you're not." Hellad softly, then unnervous. Rachel gestured for him to sit. For the next hour, they went over every possible question the opposing counsel might raise. She tested him, drilled him, eventualing his tone on certain points. When he finally stood to leave, she said, "You'll win." "You think so?" "I know so." He paused. "Rachel, why do you help Mom?" "Really?" She closed her book because for the first time, someone didn't care that I wear sneakers or clean floors. "You listen to me. That matters." He stood still, hand on the drawer knob. "I didn't just listen. I learned." The door clicked shut behind him. Rachel sat down again, but her heart was racing. She opened her notebook, wrote down one more clause, then crossed it out. Her thoughts weren't legal anymore. They were personal. The next morning, A junior associate passed her in the hallway and whispered, "Thanks for the note on cross-compensation clauses." She hadn't signed yet her name, but they were starting talk now. They were starting to respect her. And for the first time, Rachel felt like she wasn't just rewriting contracts. She was rewriting her own life. Do you think Michael is starting to see Rachel for what she really is? Should someone without a degree be allowed to shapemajor legal strategy if they clearly know more than the rest? If you believe in knowledge and passion matter more than titles, drop a thumbs up or type yes in the comments. Monday morning arrived cloaked in winter fog as if Boston itself was holding its breath. The Superior Court was packed reporters jostling for a glimpse of infamous Renshaw case interns whispering out the janitor, lawyer, and Granton Foster's legal team lined up in polished shoes in tense silence. In the back row, dressed simply in a navy blouse and black slacks, Rachel Evans sat with her notebook folded neatly in her lap. She wasn't officially allowed to participate. She wasn't even supposed to be in the room. But Michael had looked her straight in the eyes that morning and said, "Don't be late. Up at front." Michael stood as the defense lead, composed but visibly tight at crossed shoulders. For 40 minutes, he held the courtroom in the palm of his hand, precise, persuasive, and perfectly aligned with the strategy Rachel had built. His delivery was flawless until the opposing counsel dropped a surprise precedent. "Your Honor," the woman began, her tone sharp, "we'd like to introduce Torres versus Infinity Holdings. This ruling changes the interpretation of Fitzgerald versus Morgan Steele, which the defense relied heavily on." A tremor of doubt spread across Michael's face. He hadn't prepared for Torres. Neither had the team. It was a ruling published only weeks ago, and their research hadn't covered it. Rachel sat up straighter. She knew that case. She had found it days ago, her eyes locked on Michael, who was flipping through papers in assailant panic. Then, in the quiet space between objection and rebuttal, she said it just loud enough for him to hear. Partial, not full modification. Article 127, paragraph 3. Michael Paul turned toward the judge and smiled. "With respect, Your Honor," he said calmly. Torres versus Infinity Holdings introduces only a partial modification to Fitzgerald. Paragraph 3 of Article 127 makes that distinction clear. It applies only to hostile takeovers, not mutual mergers like ours. The judge raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Proceed." Michael laid out the clarification point by point. The court leaned in. The opposing counsel fell silent. By noon, the courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in disbelief. The judge ruled in favor of Grant Foster. Clause 38B stood. The Renshaw Group's legal weapon had been disarmed, and $60 million were safe. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as the legal team exited. But Michael didn't join the interviews or the handshakes. He went looking for Rachel. He found her sitting on a stone bench by the parking garage, tying her shoelace. She looked up unsurprised. "You did it," she said. "No, we did it," Shesmold. "Technically, I didn't do anything." Michael reached into his coat and handed her an envelope inside an official offer letter. "I want you to be me legal advisor. Full benefits, office, salary, title." She looked at the letter, then at him. "That's a big change. So it's what you've done for this firm. No more hiding." Rachel hesitated. "Michael, you know what'll happen when the board finds out who I really am. They'll realize that they've been outsmarted by a woman in sneakers and a Garfield shirt," he said. "And maybe, just maybe, they'll start questioning who they've been listening to all along." She nodded. "Then I accept, but I'm not wearing heels." Later that night, the office threw an impromptu celebration. No speeches, no champagne towers, just pizza laughter and a playlist someone threw together at the last minute. Rachel sat at her desk typing an email draft for a legal blog. Michael walked in with 2 slices and a smile. Do you ever stop working? Do. You ever stop hovering? They sat together insolent, watching the office glow with unfamiliar joy. Then softly he said, There's something I haven't said. Rachel turned to him. I'm sorry for kissing you and calling it a mistake. She didn't say anything. It wasn't a mistake, he added. I was scared. You made me feel like I was more than my title, and that terrified me. You still think I need you to say that? No, but I needed to say it. Rachel looked down at the slice in her hand. You want a real answer? He nodded. You're not the first man to underestimate me, but you might be the first to regret it out loud. Michael leaned back, letting that sit between them. What happens now? He asked. You stop apologizing. We work. We win more cases. Maybe someday you meet my mom, your mom? She runs background checks with her eyes. Good luck. He laughed, and for the first time in weeks, Rachel let herself enjoy it. The following month, Rachel began speaking at Brookside Community Center again. This time as herself, not as a janitor, note in secret, as a legal educator. At her first session, the room was packed out teenagers, single parents, small business owners. And in the back, leaning against the doorframe, stood Michael Grant. No suit, just jeans and a button-down. Watching her teach with pride, he didn't try to hide. After the session, he helped stack chairs. One of the young women approached him. Are you the guy she saved in court? Michael smiled. Now I'm the guy who almost didn't realize how brilliant she is. This spring, Rachel's story had spread beyond Boston. A journalist from a legal magazine published a profile titled The Janitor, who cleaned up corporate law. She became a symbol not just of brilliance, but of all the minds overlooked because they didn't come wrapped in prestige. 6 months later, she enrolled in law school, this time part-time. This time with a quiet promise, she whispered to her son Aiden one night while he slept. Unfinish ink this for me, for us. And she did. The night she passed the bar exam, Michael showed up at her apartment with a library card and a cake. What's this? She asked. The card is for the library you asked for. You're building it, remember? For your community, for Aiden. She smiled, touched. The card and the cake. That's just because I'm in love with you. She laughed. Took you long enough. They kissed. No confusion, no fear, just the quiet understanding that they had rewritten something much larger than a contract. They had rewritten who gets to matter in theorems where power lives. Now it's your turn to tell us. Did you believe Rachel would go this far? Do you think brilliance should be defined by degrees or by action? If this story moved you, even just a little comment the number 100 down below. Tell us which country you're watching from. And if you believe more people should hear stories like Rachel's, please share this video.